Hello, folks, and welcome to the Juniper Networks podcast. In today's episode, Bob Friday, CTO and founder of Mist Systems, a Juniper Company, sits down with Ken Jennings, computer scientist, writer, and Jeopardy legend, for a wide-ranging conversation on AI. They'll talk about the good, the bad, and how AI can impact our lives tomorrow. Please do enjoy this podcast.
Yeah, so the one thing I was curious about was, I started Mist in 2014. How soon were you involved? A lot earlier, before the actual Jeopardy game itself? How soon did they get you involved in the practice sessions?
Yeah, I knew years in advance that IBM had this in mind. The story I heard was that Watson was kind of born way back in 2004 when I was on Jeopardy for the first time. And I guess some IBM engineers looking for a Deep Blue-like challenge. You know, what's the next big AI moonshot? Were in some kind of a bar or a restaurant and watched the restaurant empty out. Everybody headed into the bar to watch something on TV. And they were trying to figure out what the sports event was. And the server says, "Oh, no, it's that guy on Jeopardy. He's going to lose tonight." So I guess I was the reason why Watson was conceived that night. And I first heard, I don't know, maybe around 2010, a couple years before the match, that IBM was working on this, and would I be interested in playing if they ever got it working at televisable Jeopardy levels, because at the time they were not there yet. And I said, sure, that sounds like fun. And then it was kind of radio silence for years. I would occasionally get an update from IBM via Jeopardy, kind of showing what the research was doing. They sent me a graph at one point where I was watching Watson's accuracy kind of march toward a scatter graph of real life Jeopardy champions, historical Jeopardy champions. And you could see that, you know, whereas the best question answering algorithm in the world in 2007 couldn't come close. Really all it took was a couple of years of hard work, and this thing was now as good as any human. And there were a lot of practice matches that took place with other kind of Jeopardy, ex-Jeopardy champs filling in as cannon fodder. And I got to watch, they sent me a Blu-ray so I could watch them, but I was kept very separate from that. They didn't want it, apparently Watson was allowed to have full access to my Jeopardy history, but I did not get to see its.
Okay, so they were trying to give some home field advantage to their little. I saw your TED Talk. I thought your TED Talk was interesting. Where you did you actually feel somewhat obsoleted, or was that more of a TED Talk thing?
No, that was very real. You could definitely feel the home court advantage. We did the whole match instead of on the Jeopardy set. The whole thing was taped at an IBM research lab, in White Plains, New York. So we all trooped out there to this, the snowy forest in the middle of nowhere, where they had set up a mock Jeopardy set in the corporate auditorium there. And it very much was an away game for humanity. There's a big Watson logo at center court. The crowd was pretty much 100% IBM executives and engineers and stockholders with one eye on the share price. So it was not a very pro-human crowd. Everybody there wanted to see Watson win. And at the end of the game, I do remember feeling like, because our claimed by Watson, and I remember thinking, wow, this was the one skill I had that made me feel kind of special. I was weirdly good at Jeopardy, which was always my favorite game show. And all it took was, a few $1 million in R&D and some of IBM's smartest minds and 3,000 fast servers running in parallel. And there it goes. Like, the one thing I could do is now obsolete. And I started to think that maybe I wasn't the first person. I felt like an auto worker on the assembly line watching the robot do his job. And I thought, this is coming for a lot more jobs that we thought of as machine proof. Actual thinking work is going away.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. It's funny they did it. It's almost like the chess and the go thing, right? They proved that they could do it, but they didn't follow up with it didn't seem like a sensible, because when I saw that was the inspiration for, yes, I should be able to build something to play networking. And I looked at Watson and it was like, hey, what they did wasn't that extensible to what I was trying to do in answering networking questions. And after doing it for 4 years now, I can see it seems like it's relatively hard to build something that can really answer questions on par with a human. It's not trivial. At least on the technical side, it's not. You're answering technical questions.
I don't know what the state of the art is right now. I know IBM really amped it up that way. Every time a journalist would ask IBM, "Hey, did you guys just invent Skynet? Is this HAL 9000? Did you guys just make the computer that's going to kill us all?" Which was the number one question people were asking. And they would always say, "No, no, no. This is the nice computer from Star Trek. You just ask a question to the ether, and this algorithm gives you exactly the most relevant information that you wanted in the most concise way possible." And they really made it sound like a very generalizable tool. And they were hyping medical diagnostic and business analytics and tech support, all kinds of question answering arenas. And I don't know, I haven't seen much of Watson in those areas. And I'm led to believe that what you're saying is true, that the specific task, winning a game show, a very specific game show, is a lot different than answering questions that other non-Alex Trebek people tend to have.
So what's your official start date when you think about the official, like how long it took them to build this thing? So they what was the game? So you played in what, 2012 or so?
Games aired early in 2012, and I knew about it a few years in advance, but I think there had been movement earlier than that. The first, Watson 0.1 is online in late 2007. So there's at least 3 or 4 years of different versions of Watson. And that version of Watson is not good. It answers it takes a swing at about half of the Jeopardy clues. It only feels confident enough to answer about half of them. And it only is right about half the time. And that's just not good enough. They knew they had to get up to about 90% accuracy. And so that was 2007. So it took them 4 or 5 years to advance from that baseline to human level play. But it's really not that long when you think about it.
Well, I'm trying to compare myself because I feel like I've been on the mission to play championship level networking Jeopardy. I think I'm probably north of 50%. So I'm trying to think. I'm still, I figure I get to 90%. If the Jeopardy guys did it in 4 or 5 years, I'm probably on track. I got about another year or two before I feel like I'm playing championship level networking Jeopardy. Okay, so I'm not doing too. Yeah, I feel like I'm not doing too bad. I'm not sure I spent as much money as IBM on Watson yet.
Right, you may not have their R&D budget. It's interesting that you're both dealing with a kind of a tighter answer set than the general task of answering all questions, because Jeopardy may seem like they ask about everything, but they don't. There's very much a canon, and there's very much a corpus of hundreds of thousands of past games that they could analyze and find out. Look, what does this thing really have to do, which I imagine is very similar to networking questions. And it's funny that we often think of, question answering accuracy as the lone metric. How often does this thing give the right answer? But, IBM turned out Watson had to be very concerned with a broader question, like how often does the thing even feel confident taking a swing at an answer? In Jeopardy, you have the option to just sit back and not press the button. And that doesn't work if you're, diagnosing cancer or, targeting a drone strike or something. You don't want the opportunity to just say, I'll wait for the next question, please.
Yeah, I'll wait for an easy support ticket.
Yeah.
Now, just out of curiosity, are you involved in AI at all anymore? Or was does this the whole Watson Jeopardy thing follow you around with full life now, or you moved on to bigger and better things?
It's kind of funny. I was a computer science major in college, so I took AI classes, and I was super interested. Like as a young person, even as a kid, I remember my dad reading Douglas Hofstadter books to me, and we got our first Apple II computer, and it was just the first chess computers. We were fascinated by this idea that computers could start to do human tasks. But to this day, now it's 6 or 7 years later, and people, I still get asked to think about this and talk about this and write about this. And can you come to our tech event and relive Watson? So I'm very much like, it's kind of a Neil Armstrong type thing where the whole rest of his life, he has to talk about something that took only a few hours, but people are endlessly curious.
Yeah, well, I'm personally curious because, like I say, every time I tell a story, my one thing is like, am I on par? How long does it take me to build Marvis? That's my version of Watson right now, and so it's like I want to make sure I'm not making sure I'm keeping pace with the champion guys.
What's the origin of that name, by the way? I know, like Watson is for an IBM, founder/executive type. What's your name?
If you've never watched Iron Man?
Oh, gotcha. Yes, I've seen all the. I have two teenagers. I've seen plenty of Iron Man.
Okay, so yeah, if you remember if you actually remember the AI character, there was a Jarvis in Iron Man. Actually, there was a Friday. One of the AI characters was actually Friday in one of them.
Right. So you're Jarvis inspired. I get it.
Yeah, Jarvis, Marvis. That was kind of the okay, you guys. You might as well. And there was a little bit of a debate about how many people would get the analogy right when we did. Like there was a debate about whether we should just call it a virtual network analyzer. Like we can't call that. We can't call it that. You got to put some personality behind this thing.
It's an open question how much you lean into the whole super destructive AI stereotype, because that's what Hollywood always gives us. Jarvis begets Ultron, who almost destroys the world. And IBM, I think, was not ready for this and was very concerned when so much of the press coverage revolved around, well, here's Watson on Jeopardy, but what happens when he gets the missile codes? I think they were really taken unawares by how much built-in animus there is out there to the threat of machines doing human tasks and what that means long term. Partly it's because Hollywood has just kind of inculcated that into us, but maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe our fear of our own obsolescence makes us tell those kinds of stories.
Well, I think there is some truth in reality, right? Of any new technology, right? Almost any new technology can be abused, right? Humans have an interesting way of always finding ways to abuse technology. It's a rational fear, I would say. But I think we're a little ways away from the tipping point, right?
Even if it's not Armageddon of some kind, there might be the slow Armageddon of what it does on the labor side, what it does to the economy, what it does to a middle class when a lot of these kind of respectable thinking office jobs become automobile. It's not just Jeopardy champs. It's going to be pharmacists and paralegals. And I saw some university develop an algorithm where you could give it the box score of a Major League Baseball game, and it could give you 300 words, as if off the wire service of what the highlights and accounts of the games were. So sports writers apparently might be out of work. None of these machines are as good as the humans they're replacing, but obviously they're a lot faster and you don't have to pay them a thing.
If you think about the, kind of the Star Trek analogy of, all those technologies we saw on Star Trek all of a sudden becoming real, right? There is kind of are we approaching the day when we're in a society where we don't have, automation, we don't have enough jobs for everyone, right? You're in a society where, hey, automation's finally got to the point where, we need to find another way of keeping everybody entertained. It's like farming, right? I think a farmer can feed like 10,000 people now, something. It's gotten to like some ridiculous level now of how efficient farmers are.
Star Trek's an interesting case because they posit a post-scarcity society where everything turned out great. Right. People don't need work to give them their lives meaning anymore, but that doesn't matter because they all get really into, on Star Trek, weirdly old-timey hobbies. Seems like they're always doing ships in bottles or putting on Shakespeare plays or, making wine, just kind of these artisanal things will give our lives meaning. And I hope that's true. But what it really means is the replicators, all the inventions that lead to the end of scarcity have to kick in before the jobs go away or simultaneous to it. And even if that happens, you've got the problem of what if it's the Wall-E future where in the absence of work, we all just become kind of lazy and aimless and just sit and scroll our phones all the time. I feel like I'm halfway there already.
You do get the feeling that we're entering an interesting spot in humanity, right? That, if you look at how things changed over the last couple hundred years, we're at some weird acceleration point, right? Because, for thousands of years, your life didn't change much relative to your great-great-great-grandfather, right? Nothing changed for hundreds of years. Technology was seemed like the last 100 years were accelerating at a kind of an interesting pace, even over our lifetime, right? From the time we were kids, I'm not sure how old you are, but it's amazing what I've seen happen from the time I was a kid to now, right? I've gone through 3 different ways of listening to music.
Yeah, I agree. The acceleration is kind of troubling. It's specifically in terms of Watson. I kind of wonder about the acceleration of information we see. By some estimates, the human race will generate as many bits of information in the next 18 months as it did in all the rest of human history. From ancient Egypt back to today. We're doubling the amount of information now, around the order of every year or two. Given that arena, it's great that we have more information access and digital tools like Watson or Siri or Google or whatever to help us kind of navigate the answers to the questions we have. But I do worry a little that the easy availability of those answers might have the wrong effect on us. It might be kind of another Wall-E type thing where we subconsciously realize, oh, I don't need to know stuff or learn stuff anymore because all my fact retrieval can be done by my device. So what's the point of knowing any fact? And I kind of wonder what that looks like, a post-knowledge society, a post-information society where our phones know everything, and as a result, we know nothing. I wonder what happens to decision-making, for example, in a world like that. It seems a little ominous.
I will have to say, I suspect there is a tipping point. I mean, the day when machines actually start passing the Turing test, right? I do see that. I don't know if it's 50 years or 100 years from now, but there is a day coming when we will basically build machines that can pass that Turing test of, yes, they'll be able to fake you out. You won't know if you have a human or a machine on the other side of the line. I mean, I think we are coming to that day. That's in our future. I don't know if it's in our lifetime.
I had a really interesting conversation with somebody at Amazon. I guess Amazon does an annual Alexa prize where they award, I think it's $1 million prize for whoever can write the best chatbot that runs on Alexa. Yep. Who can perfect conversation over digital assistant. And the way they run it is really interesting. They have a series of human judges, and it kind of runs like the Gong Show. Somebody chats with the chatbot, and as soon as the humans are bored, they kind of nope out, and you don't win the prize because the audience got bored. It's basically a Turing test as Gong Show. And one of the things they told me is that the reason why they switched to this rather than a straight, identity test as predicted by Alan Turing is that the Turing test is now insufficient. We now want a computer that's actually better than a Turing test in many ways. We don't want a computer that answers our questions exactly as a human would. We want one that has access to more information and more insightful additions than a human would give. So we've moved the goalposts. Amazon at least has moved the goalposts to, not just a Turing test. Don't just duplicate a human. Really replace them. Make this thing a better conversationalist than any human, and then you win the prize.
We're definitely seeing the networking side where a networking IT guy, there's just too much data for him to consume, right? When he's trying to deal with problems, we're generating, all these networks are generating so much data. It's almost overwhelming for an average person to kind of plow through it all to try to sort out what's really happening anymore. But for me, I think in the short term, the AI, all this stuff is more about helping humans plow through tons of data that you can't manually do by yourself. Like in the old days, right? Where they give you a spreadsheet, you can look at what's going on. Nowadays, you're right. They give you you get a couple of petabytes of data to deal with. So there's a good question. On the positive side, have you seen any good uses for AI?
I feel like we're not even aware of all the great work that AI does. I mean, and often it's because we've defined it down. Once a task becomes so mundane that we just see it everywhere, we don't even think, thank you, artificial intelligence. In fact, we kind of think, this can't really count as AI just because it works so well and is such an ingrained part of my life. The fact that the spelling autocorrect on my phone, or the fact that Google kind of can tell by what I've recently searched for which results of my next search are most pertinent. That's remarkable, and it's almost invisible to us. We just think, great, the universe has arranged itself to be more convenient to me, the protagonist of reality. We just think of it as the way things should work. We get used to it so quickly. In fact, those are very hard artificial intelligence tasks, and we shouldn't ignore the convenience and the benefit of them. It's remarkable how we thought we were going to have to solve all these problems with cleverness, how can we duplicate the hundreds of things that happen in the brain to get a decision? How do we make that happen in a computer? And really just an abundance of data solved a lot of it for us. We can now simulate some of those outcomes just by having, 100 million past test cases. And given that, it's very easy to train an AI to do the thing you want. It can find its own patterns and do its own learning. It's remarkable.
Well, I have to agree. I think this AI stuff is kind of sneaking into our lives without us realizing, whether it's kind of that self-driving car trying to make sure you don't go off the road type of thing. Or, for me, I'm taking these little guitar lessons. And with Alexa now, I can basically tell Alexa to play Take It Easy 5 times in a row, right? So I want to play along with it. Like these small little things that kind of sneak into your life to make your life easier. You don't really appreciate it until until just.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, that no true Scotsman thing that happens with AI, where the second that an artificial intelligence task is perfected, we think, oh, well, that was pretty easy. That must not be true artificial intelligence. What's next? It's going to happen so slowly we don't even notice it. It's happening already.
Okay. Well, I mean, Ken, I think this is. I mean, I think out of this, I'm going to put the start date. I'm going to put the start date for Watson in 2007. You think that's a good start date?
That seems about right to me. So it took them 4 to 5 years to get up to TV levels.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not doing bad. And I guess how many Watson things do you do a year now?
Just being asked to speak or something, it honestly, it happens every few months. Somebody wants me to get in front of an audience with a slide deck and talk about Watson and what it all means. And I feel bad. I feel like a fraud because, I don't work in artificial intelligence. I don't engineer at Watson. I'm not an economist who can talk about the labor problems and inefficiencies. All I am is the guy who got his butt kicked on TV. But I'm fascinated by it. That made it very visceral and real to me, being the guinea pig in that situation. And it's a real honor to be associated with it. I still, people often send me pictures from their CS textbooks or their cognition or psychology textbooks where, me and Brad are pictured there next to the big black rectangle that just kicked our butts. We are part of computer and cognitive history now, whether we want to be or not.
Oh yeah, no, you guys are icons now, right? You're part of the AI history. Part of the AI history book for sure.
Probably made more history for the Jeopardy games I lost than the ones that I won.
Oh, I don't know about that. I still think you're known as the most winningest Jeopardy player, right?
I guess in 100 years that's not going to be in any textbooks, and the question answering stuff might be.
What are you doing for a full time? What do you do for a living nowadays?
Oh, I'm a writer now, full time. I was a programmer when I was on Jeopardy, but I had been an English major in school and really wanted to get back into that. I just didn't know if I could pay the bills. And so when I got a book deal after Jeopardy, I stuck with it and the book did okay. I'm working on my 13th book now. I just had a book come out last year about the history of comedy and how it's kind of shaped modern civilization. And, I do the occasional TV thing or public speaking, but really I'm a writer full time and I enjoy it very much. If there's something I'm interested in, I can spend a few months reading about it and turn out an article or a book. It's a lot of fun for a generalist.
Ah, okay. That's a good thing to do. Okay. Well, I guess that was about it from my side. That was just an opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's kind of an honor to speak, for me after talking about Watson every time I talk to someone. I keep feeling I ship every time I have the opportunity. I feel like I miss it by just an inch.
I think we can count this as meeting. In the post-internet world, this is better than I know most of my friends at this point. So perfect. This totally counts.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. And let us know on Twitter if there are any topics you'd like to see us cover in future episodes by tweeting @Juniper Networks. Until next time.